I should probably open up the spreadsheet so I know what we're actually doing today.
Professional podcast.
Professional grade.
I opened it 2 minutes ago, so I was so much better prepared.
You're right. But you also were here like 10 minutes late, so...
Yeah, I'm sorry.
For a time that you suggested, I'm not trying to burn you here. I'm just saying.
Do we have an idea for the discussion in Na'vi?
No, but I'm sure that somebody will come up with one as we record.
On it.
Wellingatikame mafurapo, and welcome to the Eana Mokri podcast. Today we got some film news to talk about, some Tsu'tey's Path comic discussion, a featured member interview, and as always, some practice leNa'vi conversation at the end. I'm Pamarik, and I can't do that alone, so I have my wonderful co-host with me, Plumps.
Kalte mafurapo.
Awe.
Kalte.
And Wllìm.
Kalte.
So it was recently revealed via the official Twitter that Brendan Cowell has been cast for the Avatar sequels, part of the live-action segments that are either beginning recording soon or will be filming very shortly. They're slated for spring of this year. Apparently he is Mick Scoresby, a captain of a, quote, large-scale marine hunting vessel on Pandora. Other than looking up his IMDb, I have never heard of this guy because I have not seen Game of Thrones, but apparently he's on that. Any reactions to this bit of news?
Has anyone here watched Game of Thrones?
Nope.
Okay, well, I don't have much to say.
But I don't remember him.
He's been in other things, but I also don't watch many movies or shows, so none of them ring a bell with me.
I'm not very familiar with him, so all I can say is that, well, actually not much. I can't say about him. I was gonna say he looks kind of villainish, but we don't know if he's a villain or not. So
yeah, according to some of the discussion that happened on LN, he does apparently play villain roles quite well, and if he's part of a large-scale marine hunting vessel on Pandora, I can assume that's somewhat hostile to the natural life. So
one would assume
probably follows that he's RDA adjacent.
Yeah, but he could also be a captain of a huge hunting vessel because there's still the people that are at Hell's Gate.
Also possible. Maybe they coordinated some fishing treaty of some kind where the leNa'vi and local people are comfortable with large-scale marine hunting vessels.
Yeah, I mean, I doubt it, but it's...
It also seems another discussion that has happened is that there's a lot of potential parallels there to a very prototypical environmentalist issue of like whale hunting and like overfishing and you know the destruction that can bring about. And it wouldn't surprise me in the least if that was an angle that Cameron wanted to go in.
Yeah, I can see that.
I don't have any personal issue with that before my words get misconstrued, but just bringing out speculation.
Yeah, and I see a lot of credibility to that because let's remember that James Cameron is an accomplished diver and has done a lot in terms of ocean conservation work. So I could see that being a very big part of his angle with this character.
Certainly. Final note that I had on the subject was, sure seems like they're bringing in a lot of Game of Thrones actors.
It does. Before we moved on, though, there is another piece of news that we might want to just briefly mention.
Oh, what is that?
The Pandora World of Avatar soundtrack is available on things other than Apple Music now.
That is true. It was recently announced via Twitter and other social media outlets that the Valley of Mo'ara soundtrack, the soundtrack to the Disney Animal Kingdom park, is now available on Spotify and, quote, other platforms, though honestly I don't know of any others and I haven't checked. But
Google Play Music.
If you have other
Amazon?
audio platforms, then check them, and you might be surprised to find yet another Avatar soundtrack available on there.
I know it's on Google Play Music.
Okay.
I know that for sure.
Does it also mean that we will be getting a physical CD release?
That would be nice.
I'll update in May.
Oh,
Yes. Every time somebody in LN goes to Pandora, we have to have them update us on the status of a physical soundtrack.
Well, I was just trolling their Twitter, and I found out that they have one of the metalcraft things of an amp suit, so I know what I'm picking up when I go. So
Right. They have been expanding the product line offerings for Mo'ara merch. So,
I'm not going to have a lot of money when I come back.
I see.
It's way too easy to overspend in that shop.
Well, I wouldn't know. I haven't been there, and neither has anyone else in this cast.
True.
Though I've seen they have a lot of pretty cool stuff. Disney generally does a pretty good job with like cool merch. So
I assume it's like every merchandise shop ever. I mean, look at how much I spent at in Köln with the Toruk show.
A lot of times you'll hear like the tchotchke or like novelty idea being thrown out with Disney shops, but Disney tends to be pretty good at making actually pretty darn high quality stuff.
with the attention to detail to everything else in the park, it's really no surprise.
Exactly, yeah. Like, it's ridiculous. But I could go on for hours, so let's not get into that.
What about the other news? I was a little bit confused with the Vin Diesel stuff. What was that all about?
Yeah, so that got misinterpreted. Yeah, so Vin Diesel visited James Cameron's set of Avatar. I believe it was the performance capture studio that they have.
Yeah.
But apparently it was just a visit to say hi and because he's always wanted to. Vin Diesel said he's always wanted to work with Cameron, though. So he clearly idolizes him or looks up to him. But as far as we know, there is no confirmation that he has an actual role in the film in any capacity. And a Reddit account belonging to James Cameron, by all outward appearances, it's kind of hard to tell on the internet, but it definitely looks to be him, actually commented on the post in the Avatar subreddit saying, no, he doesn't have a part. This was a misunderstanding. Sorry about that.
Okay.
No need to panic.
Yeah, no need to panic. The Fast and the Furious universe is still a couple stones removed from the Avatar universe.
Okay.
Despite what some high-quality fan fiction may tell you.
However, there is no news yet on the Terminator one.
Right. I actually told as soon as we heard anything about this, I told my one good friend who's a super huge Fast and the Furious fan, and he's like, I'm suddenly interested in the Avatar sequels. And I'm like, sure, whatever, anything I can do to promote some Avatar goodwill among my friends, I will do so happily. But when I revealed to him later, it's like, yeah, actually, it looks like it was a misunderstanding. He's like, well, he's still got Sigourney Weaver and Stephen Lang. So I'm like, yeah, definitely.
Well, it doesn't have to be the Fast and Furious. Vin Diesel also plays the Riddick character, right? So at least that's in
true.
Space. Well, we don't know where Fast and Furious is going to go. So.
Right.
Very fair point there.
All I know is that if I see a Guardians of the Galaxy crossover, I'm quitting this fandom.
You're not the only one. I love both movies, but no, don't.
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah. If Vin Diesel was a canon addition to the sequels, then we would have, half of the Guardians of the Galaxy, half of the crew of Game of Thrones.
I always forget that he plays Groot.
Yeah. I learned that because I looked it up on IMDb. Not because I'm particularly movie savvy.
He has 5 entire words throughout both movies.
Well, that ended up being longer than anticipated, so let's move on to Tsu'tey's Path issue number 3.
Who would like to start?
Go. Please start, because I know you have more positive words than I do.
To say, I haven't heard a lot of people have said this one's kind of devoid of info, and I'm going to be honest, it's definitely more devoid of info than the previous two have been. But there are a couple of scenes that I found very interesting.
Okay.
Specifically, I found the one at the beginning relatively interesting because this is the first time that we see Grace and Tsu'tey come back and meet each other again.
That was definitely one of the most substantial bits from this issue.
Yeah, I thought so too. That to see that they have a deeper connection than is obvious from the movies, or from the movie.
Will be movies soon.
Yeah, but not with Tsu'tey.
True.
I do
Fair
remember
enough.
It was either in one of those early drafts, because like I've read like every version of Avatar, like from 880 to final script. I can't remember, but there was I vaguely remember some version of the script mentioned that Tsu'tey was also a particularly good student of Grace's, though that might also just be me confusing the extensive Silwanan lore with Tsu'tey. But we do know for a fact that Tsu'tey was one of Grace's students.
Yeah.
So, but it is nice to see that there was that connection.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I just went from the knowledge that we have from the movie, and there it seems that, to me at least, that he wasn't particularly involved with the school. So I was quite surprised by this.
One other thing is, so a lot of the comic goes through the hunting scene that's in one of the extended editions. I can't remember if it's the extended, only the ECE that has it, or if it's both that and the extended theatrical that has it.
I think it was in the special edition as well, but I'm not totally certain.
I would be willing to bet that it was. I was looking to see if I could find it. I would venture to guess that there's a significant amount of people that actually haven't seen that scene. Mm-hmm. So I think that its inclusion in here was kind of purposeful in that sense, because it's a little bit of important backdrop for the party around the Yult app, or Tsu'tey's visit to, it appears to be Tree of Souls, isn't it?
It certainly looks like that.
Which that scene was really interesting because there's like almost some kind of love interest there.
Yep.
With Sayla, you mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I said it before in issue, I think it was one where she talks about the like almost throwing over Eitukan. So, I mean, she seems like a handful.
Yeah, this
troublemaker.
Is one of the things I'm definitely going to do once the full comic series has been revealed is actually go and reread, because they juggle characters like all the time. Like Sayla's definitely been a persistent presence in the comics so far, but like in the first issue alone they threw out like 4 character names, and like maybe 2 of them have seen more than one issue, and it's like, oh, okay, so who do I care about here? But
yes.
It will be interesting once the full backstory is revealed to go through and then be like, okay, what did Sayla do in every single issue, and sort of contextualize it like that.
Yeah, I think the monthly serialization makes it somewhat hard to like keep up with the storyline, because as you said, it's pretty hard already to keep track of all the characters, and I already like did a bit of free reading, but I think it will need like close inspection from my part to clearly see the story when it's all been released.
So going off of a point that Alway made, my critique is one that is shared by many people, that there wasn't really a whole lot of substance in this issue. Basically, if you've seen the extended collector's edition and the deleted or unfinished scenes, basically if you're a super huge Avatar nerd, most of this there's no news here really. But the interesting bit is that we can assume that the comics are canon, and the unfinished scenes always occupied a weird canonicity level where it's like these were intended to be shot, but then they weren't. And was it just cut for time, or was it cut because it didn't fit the vision after the fact? So now with the sequels underway, and any piece of Avatar media that is produced needs to adhere to a newfound value in canonicity. It's interesting to see that they did in fact validate some of those deleted, unfinished or extended scenes as canon, and that we can presumably assume that everything that was there is canon. I mean, if they go and then decanonize the comic books later, I'll be like, okay, what the hell are you guys doing? But as of this point, we can assume, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of that is canon, somewhat.
One of the more contentious canon scenes from the Unfinished Scene series was the scene called New Life, where it is shown that Neytiri is pregnant with children. I mean, obviously now that we know that the sequels are going to heavily revolve around the Sully family, it's like, okay, duh, that's basically canon. But I remember for a long time before we even knew that the Sully family would be the focus of maybe not the focus, but definitely heavily involved in the sequels. That was always something that's like, this might have just been cut because we don't know if Cameron actually wanted this to exist or not. But now we know,
because a lot of it is they may have cut that for the sake of, we don't want to set this up as though there's a sequel coming without being 100% sure that we're going to do sequels.
Absolutely, because Avatar, it's easy to forget now, but Avatar was a huge unknown in its time.
Yeah, it's definitely easy to forget considering it's just kind of sitting there on number 1 still. Nothing coming close to it.
Close is relative, but yeah, no. I mean, for God's sakes, 21st Century Fox kept Alvin and the Chipmunks the Squeakquel as a backup if Avatar flopped.
Yikes.
That's a piece of trivia that I will like always hold on to.
A backup.
Yes, Alvin and the Chipmunks the Squeakquel, known in cinematic circles as a masterpiece.
Of course.
The finest of movies.
But, it's on my bucket list to see it, I guess.
My opinions. First one, decent. Others, they don't exist. We don't talk about them.
Well, so you might want to cut this out, I don't know. So, I mean, I've not seen the extended edition of the movie. So for me, it was actually somewhat new. And I kind of liked it. It was interesting. So maybe that's for a perspective of someone who hasn't seen the full version of the movie. I guess.
Absolutely. Yeah, and we're keeping this in. That is actually a really good point, and Aoi mentioned that this issue may have largely been for the probably significant percentage of Avatar fans who have not seen the extended collector's edition or the special scenes or any of that. Yeah, it's definitely substantial stuff for people who haven't seen those things. And again, because it is now canon, obviously it's important for the larger, broader audience to know of these things. Yeah, and again, all my criticism stems from I've already seen all this because I am like I'm in the top 100 of like Avatar nerds.
Yeah, I think that's probably falls under I fall under that definition as well. So
I'm pretty sure anybody who can speak a lick of Na'vi falls into that category. The fact we hold whole 20+ minute conversations at the end of every episode of the Avatar podcast slightly suggests to me that we might be in the target demographic of James Cameron's Avatar.
Wait. You mean we are not talking about The Last Airbender?
No, that's the other podcast.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the other
2 doors
Avatar
down.
Podcast. Do they have a podcast even?
Probably. It's a pretty big fan base.
Maybe we should do a crossover at some point. Not that I've ever seen the other Avatar, but we can trash talk about it.
It's about the movie, right? That it's about the movie, right?
We missed a killer April 1st opportunity.
Oh,
Next year. We had to get the Navi's one out first.
Right. Okay, so yeah, between
next
now
year.
and next year, we need to build many bridges with the Avatar: The Last Airbender community, find their podcast, and then like swap hosts for like a day.
That would be awesome. Two groups of hosts that have no idea what they're talking about.
Right. Yes, I've personally actually never even seen like anything of Avatar: The Last Airbender, so I would be the most clueless. Yeah, I know there's a lot of crossover.
I'm equally clueless. No idea.
I'm the only one who's seen it. Oh.
No, I know you're not alone in this community. I know there's a bunch of other people who talk about it, but
I can tell you it's worth it.
Oh, I know. There's lots of media that I haven't seen. I'm not a thing watcher.
Thing watcher.
Thing watcher. Okay.
That's my problem.
I don't watch don't watch things.
So, sort of indicative of my role on this podcast, like, so the way that I approach media is like I will find a piece of media that I like a lot and then do an extremely deep dive on it. I find it very hard for me to do a very like broad and like watch a lot of things and not get like super invested in them and like do full wiki walks on them. So me getting involved in a piece of media is a very exhaustive thing. Like it drains a lot of energy from me to get involved in something new. So I haven't seen a whole lot of things, but I know like everything there is to know about the things I involve myself in.
Right. Yeah, for Avatar, that's pretty clear, I would say.
Yeah. It would appear so.
Somewhat.
That blue name over there seems to
vaguely suggest that. Speaking of huge Avatar nerds, so we have a featured member interview finally returning to the podcast. I know it's been a while since we have done one of these, but trust us, audience, we have not forgotten. We just... okay, honesty moment. During the recording of the last 2 episodes, we were like, holy moly, this has gone on really long. We can't make this episode go on any longer. Let's push it to next episode. And then that happened twice. So anyway, because this is a slightly lighter episode as far as conversation topics go, we're going to resume our interviews and hopefully continue along down through the hosts and then get to interviewing other members of the community, which will be very exciting. We'll have other guests on the podcast. We're looking forward to it.
Yep, me too. So, Wllìm, it's your turn.
Cowell.
So, as we always do, talk a little bit about yourself, maybe a little bit about your background and how you got to the community.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so my name is Wllìm, as you hopefully already know if you've listened to this podcast for a few times. I live in the Netherlands. So as for my background, I am a PhD student in computer science in real life. And then at some point I got involved with Avatar. So I think in 2011 I saw Avatar for the first time. This was on DVD. I've never seen Avatar actually in a cinema. And then I didn't really know yet that the language was learnable, but I already liked the language, but I thought it was just gibberish. Then at some point during a random Wikipedia walk or something, I figured out that it was actually a language that you could learn. And I started learning, and this was end of 2013. And then after a few months, I made an account on the forum, and well, that's it basically, I guess.
And did you have any background in language learning apart from English?
Okay, so I got French and German was taught in high school, but I didn't really pick up on that a lot back then. I had already been interested in constructed languages earlier, so I've had a brief period of learning Loosbaan, which is a constructed logical language. And yeah, I'm just interested in languages in general.
All right. Yeah, I remember. I think at one point when we had a conversation in Na'vi that you told me about the Lojban connection. Yeah, I remember.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, that is really an interesting language. So if there's any conlangers around here who have not tried to learn it yet, or at least learned to write the grammar rules yet, look at it, because this makes everything so logical, which I like.
I've definitely seen it among the list of the poster children for conlanging. It's like, oh, it's like Klingon, Elvish, and then like Lobjan is like usually rounds out the list at the bottom, but I know nothing about it. But the fact that you mentioned it's a very logical one has piqued my curiosity. I'll at least Wikipedia article it.
Yeah, so I basically forgot all the vocabulary, so I really cannot speak any Lojban anymore. Okay. But I mean, I still know. I still know kind of like the grammar, and it's just so logical. Like I mean, we all know that Na'vi is already pretty logical language, but if you've ever done like studied any Lojban, then Na'vi has so many exceptions. I mean, it's too natural.
Interesting. Then I might actually like it.
Maybe.
I was struggling to find another language that I would like, so
if you want to pick it up again, I would be also interested in like doing this together with you, because I would want to pick it up at some point again.
We'll see.
I see a new podcast.
I'm sure
Welcome
they have
to the Lobjan podcast with literally just us.
Well, they definitely have a Discord, so maybe they have a podcast. I don't know.
Okay.
Anyway,
you joined the learnna'vi community. Is there anything particular what drove you to the community? Is it just that you wanted to learn it, or was there something else that you found interesting?
So for me, so when I watched Avatar the first time, I was of course blown away by the movie itself. But I think, just like to be honest, I think not as much as most other people that would be listening right now. I'm like I mostly got here because I really like the sound of the language and I wanted to learn it. So I mean, when I figured out that Na'vi was learnable, then of course immediately the first, I think, external link on the Wikipedia page was, okay, there's this one forum where people actually make an effort to learn the language. So I really came for that reason in the first place. And of course, in the meantime, I've also like become more and more of an actual Avatar fan. But yeah, I really came for the language in the first place.
Oh, all right. Okay. We touched about that in last episode, because by now you're the only one very active from the Netherlands by now. I remember that there was a member called Puvo Moon, and he contributed quite a lot in the beginning. Have you done anything for project-wise for the language or for the community?
So I'm a computer scientist basically, and I really like doing things with like on the intersection of Na'vi and programming and stuff. So I think a few years ago I made a program that conjugates Na'vi verbs, puts infixes in there, and one for nouns, and I put it online. And I think some people like it. And right now I'm working on like off and on a much larger project, which is basically to make an online dictionary that has like all the available information about words. But this is like something which is still in its infancy. I will announce it when it's ready, which is probably in a few years, I guess. No, hopefully earlier. But I'm trying
know the feeling. Yeah, you're the site that is depicts the nouns and the verbs. It is quite helpful. Maybe we can put a link in wherever this is going to go.
Okay.
To your site. All right. If the others don't have questions about the larger background, then we could go into the more Na'vi related stuff. So I think what we all want to know by now is, do you have a favorite word?
I like many Na'vi words. My favorite word, I think, would be aungia, like a sign from Ewa, sign, like spiritual sign, just because it sounds so nice. I in general, like by sound, like many of those words with many vowels in there, meruniaya, eoyo, and so on.
All right.
That's just a sound-based thing. I mean,
right.
As I said,
it's a good reason though.
I like Na'vi because it sounds so nice, so I thought it makes sense to have a favorite sound-based word. I never use it though, because when do you want to talk about spiritual signs?
Not often.
True. That's true.
Unless you live a truly enchanted life.
But it makes it all the more special. And what about a least favorite word?
Vonve. I'm sorry.
You were quite outspoken about your dislike for that word.
I never
really
understood.
Don't like
is it? Yeah, but is it because of the sound or is it because of the meaning?
No, this is because of the meaning. So it has always been a principle that Na'vi doesn't really have vulgar words. I mean, you have wia, you have tsahe, you have ois, you have a few of those words which are somewhat offensive, but not really. And then suddenly we got vonve, which to me just sounds like someone needed a translation for, I don't know, asshole or something, and this word was created. And I think it just doesn't fit into the culture. Like, okay, of course, I understand. Na'vi are like people, they will probably shout at each other and be angry with each other, but it seems like vonve is a particularly bad word. And I don't like it, and I would prefer if it would be removed from the language, but I guess it's impossible, so hey.
All right. Well, I understand where you're coming from, but I mean, just because a word exists in a language doesn't mean that you have to use it. So I know
of course.
won't use it.
Yeah, just like I voluntarily choose to not use ke.
I have no problems with ke. Well, although I would have liked ke more, I think.
So, on the topic of vonve, I think it's the best compromise. So it's actually very similar to my feelings I have about ke. Though I'm okay with vonve, but you have to be very deliberate about using it. It's not something that you can just throw out there like some people use certain expletives. But I think the fact that it's tied to its etymology of literally just being stink soul sounds like it seems like a very Na'vi way of insulting somebody, where it's not it's not, I don't know, meaninglessly expletive like, I don't know, words like fuck are in English, but it does have a very clear meaning that does come across in what its intent is to be, is that somebody is particularly reprehensible. It would be a stink soul.
Yeah,
I forgot that was the etymology of that.
Yeah, vitra onve. So for that reason, I excuse it, though I do agree somewhat with Willems' assessment that Na'vi does tend to be classier, though that might just be because of the vocabulary that Frommer has given us thus far. Who knows, in 4 years from now, after the sequels have run their course and all the language has been created for the necessity of the films, that are planned anyway, we might have a whole 20 new curse words to know, and it's not really our position to I guess be upset about what's in the language. I say as I vehemently hate Lumpe and Ke, but
yeah, of course.
Again,
I mean,
exactly what Plump said though. You can just not use it.
I mean, there's words about English I don't like. There's words about Dutch I don't like, and so this is not like an insult to Caillou Powell or whatever. I mean,
right.
Of course, there's words that people like and don't like, and I don't like vonve. You can like it. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't care. Just personally, I don't like
subjective. It. Yeah.
If it brings you any comfort, it's not even in my top 200.
in your top 200? You have a top
You have a
200
top
of lists.
200.
No, but I can spitball it, and I know for sure that it's not up there in my favorite words.
Right.
Why didn't we come to that when we interviewed you? That
That would have been a 1 hour long interview.
Word 1.
Word number
2.
57. Lowy.
I think about the words that it's probably driven by the script. So if we think about the one story that Cowell always tells is that he had to come up with the word for behind or butt pretty much on the spot, because there was a scene where they wanted to include that. So if it weren't for that, we wouldn't have a word for this body part. So,
yeah, we have so many of these oddly specific words, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So I agree with Pamarik here that I think we will see more swear words, or maybe more reptum language, right? So yeah, more.
Yeah.
That was, I don't want to talk too long because I know we're trying to interview Wllìm here, but that was something that I did find interesting, was that we had this idea of raptum ra'a before we had a whole lot of things to be raptum to begin with.
That's true.
Yeah, but you can be
also,
you can be really raptum without using actual swear words, right?
Right.
I mean,
Yeah,
if I say
point.
in English you're stupid, then I mean I'm not using offensive words, but it's still offensive.
So no.
I mean, in Na'vi you can probably come up with the most idiotic and severe like offensive language without actually using offensive words, and that's actually one of the things I liked about this.
I mean, saying things to a distinguished person without using honorific pronouns or infixes would probably be considered raptum.
Yeah.
So, how long have you been learning the Na'vi language? I know that you mentioned that you joined shortly after you learned that it was a learnable language, but have you ever taken any breaks in your learning, or have you been pretty consistent with it the entire time?
So I'm pretty consistent with not being very active at learning. Like, I'm not the type of
I feel it.
I'm not the type of person who learns every day. For me, this goes in like sprints. On Saturday I'm like, okay, I hear this podcast or I read this text and I think I should become better at this, so I start drilling, and then I drill for maybe 3 hours, and then at some point I'm less motivated, and then next week I'm like, okay, I should do this. And okay, I cannot recommend this strategy to anyone because I think it's highly suboptimal, but I think it's how my personality works. Also, I just don't have so much time to spend on Na'vi, so this is naturally how this goes. But so on and off since 2013, with like more or less activity in the meantime.
Got it. That's fine.
In particular, I'm really behind on new words right now. So I know like many of the original words, but some of the newer words that Cowell put on Na'vi, I just don't know. And I really need to get better at this. So probably after this podcast is recorded, I'll go on a sprint and do 3 hours of new words learning there.
Cram style.
If you could ask James Cameron or Cowell a related question, language or movie-wise, what would it be?
Yeah, so that would definitely be language-wise for me. I would ask if Cowell could give me like a long example of Na'vi as it would be spoken a few thousand years ago. Because I like etymology, and I would really want to see like how the Na'vi language evolved. And I think seeing a prototype of the language of a long time ago would give a much better understanding of how Na'vi actually works, even like nowadays. I'm aware that this is actually not one question, because like everyone on this podcast, we are actually asking something which takes days or weeks or months to prepare. But that would be my question.
Yeah.
I think that's really cool though. Just even maybe not even if it wasn't like an example of like spoken Na'vi as of like thousands and thousands of years ago, but more just like, oh, here's a rundown of how the language has changed. Like what are the like the key differences between ancient Na'vi and present Na'vi?
Yes.
I would be really interested in that too, because I know we know a small amount about like really in general what it was like 10,000 years ago, but we don't have anything specific as to what's fallen out of use versus what's come more into use that was considered like very informal back then.
Yes. Yeah, so this is also not only about vocabulary, this is also about grammar points, because for example, like Na'vi has tripartiteness, right? So you have a different case ending for agent, patient, and subject for intransitive verbs. How did that come to be? Almost no, like on Earth, almost no natural languages have that. And Na'vi is a bit of a weird, linguistically speaking, a bit of a weird compromise, because with modal verbs you don't get the L ending, the agentive ending. So how did this come to be? Was this different like 1,000 years ago? Was this the same? Has it always been like this? How did someone even come up with those case endings in the first place? So because I'm interested in linguistics, I'm like, okay, so I read Wikipedia about history of English and history of Dutch and how did they converge, diverge, that kind of stuff. So I would really like to see this for Na'vi.
I think that's an excellent question.
Yeah, very interesting.
Let's ask him.
Pamko.
Right. Any other questions from the other hosts?
What does the learnna'vi community mean to you?
So okay, this is a hard question because I'm not generally the person to express emotions very well. So for me, okay, it's firstly, like very plainly speaking, it's a place that I spend a lot of time on, and that, I mean, sometimes helps keeping me sane when I have to do deadlines for work, etc. Because it's just a, in general, a really friendly place. It's one of the friendliest places on the internet I know. People are always willing to help. So, I mean, like if I have a day where I'm like really not feeling well, or I'm in a bad mood, I interact with learnna'vi a bit, and this gets much better. And I mean, in general, I've been here since 2014, so it's just like almost 5-year anniversary. Maybe it's actually my 5-year anniversary somewhere about now, because I wrote down April 2014. So it's just like a large part of my life. So it means a lot to me in that respect. I find it a bit hard to express it more clearly than this.
No, I definitely understand where you're getting from, where you're coming from, what you're saying with those words. I know this community can definitely feel like a second home for me too. So, we are definitely quite, I guess, close for an internet community that is as large as we are.
Yeah, you don't see that very often, right? Like many people just become hostile, and like I'm of course on many websites and stuff, and this is definitely the friendliest one that I know, and the closest one. Yes.
Right. Definitely a lot of newcomers will also say something very similar along those lines. That we're an incredibly welcoming group, and that they really appreciate that. And I think that ties hand in hand with sort of just the greater ethos of, you know, Avatar and not the Na'vi species as a whole.
Yeah.
And it's not something that you tend to find in a lot of fandoms. A lot of fandoms tend to be very, very exclusive and be a little bit more hostile towards newcomers, especially if it's a fandom that's been around for a while.
Mm-hmm. That's something I try to be very mindful of, is I definitely always want to be encouraging people to learn and grow and practice and get better, but
everyone is a learner.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind. Like, I mean,
there are
everyone
literally no native speakers.
Yeah, there's literally no native speakers, and oftentimes, like, answers of questions are not known really, and then no one knows literally. So everyone is a learner. This is not just a figure of speech. That is actually what it is like.
Some of my favorite memories of interacting with people on LN is having these massive discussions about trying to say something in leNa'vi that we just can't figure out how to say.
Yes. I got my fair share of those. In particular, anything with programming is particularly hard.
All right. Anything else you want to say just to the audience, Wllìm? Just in general? You got a soapbox. You can say whatever you want.
I got
from the
a
top
soapbox.
Of it.
Irayo ma frapo. Yeah, you're all great. That's it. That was my soapbox talk. I really prepared that very well.
Very, very inspiring.
Good night. Drops mic.
With that out of the way, we're going to move on to our final segment, our leNa'vi language practice. We have a word of the cast, as always, to begin the discussion. Word of the cast today is sìlpey, the verb to hope. And on that subject, I will ask the prompting question. Zusaukerri sìlpey ainga aingal peu.
De Baum Nesig. Spilko.
Bam.
Sìlpey oetsne sluo diftiatu gifgea.
Skongeye Intin. Kefjak?
Ma tawe, srake nga tokfitsengid.
Sran.
Sngumre
Sìlpey.
Tiftiari
Fuego.
Gifgea. Neo ngal intenti.
Sran. Olte neo oe kivar netan.
Så Wedi nitang nangai sla tänkta peuteri neo oi kivar keomumwel.
Ngatsun kivar lì'fya leNa'vi kefjak. Ute nga litsakemsi ha flole.
Ute nisilpey sko tintin neye.
Strane polel wel nitan suta tsun oi sngiva'i sianalti YouTube teri lì'fya lì'fya ute
M'an. M'an. Srake nga snekola'i tsat li kefjak.
Strane snngola'i sla physicist ke kem soli.
Ja. Slä
Kerelti alusik wel ngolo physicist.
Ja, slä fkoru keu spilwe taluna sienu fkeito ulte ketsrana grr nganeu kemosivi sa tsakemsi nga ha ulte spilwel futa suteru sunu sayunu tsa'u.
Ningai Luweru mipa ai sat o niveau reltiarusik ha neo mangao we niveau alvea episode ti numun Fte tsani
Sran. Ha aunga silpeko.
Neo niveau ai realita rusik ni teng sle Keluveru ke a krr sle la muveru sefpil a ngob aua realita rusik a slatsu ai horeni lì'fya leNa'vi nipu sle luveru sefpil sle keluveru ke a krr tafral sakem kesuli
Tingazik lekker letter
Srane ha sìlpey oet sne lievu veru krr ne ul Tolungazik
Weri we in it an niteng Luweru haung te gangem vi
small weg zat ervoor niet denk nou frakker nou aya kemsivi altijd zakker keluweru kea krr a niltsan awa kemsivi Ulte kesunu verutsau sle ketsun fkoleki vatem peunturuke
Siltsana lì'fyavi
Srane solena o FP vil Pot ewesan senef koleki vatem se a krr fpoleluel futa fkeito sa lì'fyavi leNa'vi afkotsun si varfitsenge otet sa krr solero kwel
Vtolia wel nifker li'u alu li Srare nesilpets no sivuno sivar li'u fi podcastime
Kelun sa li'u li'u fitra
ha ketsuno sivar li'u
tam
Sran so
Ja, ren.
me hin trai li'u alu li laiu li'u hap
Kehe li poleun aiwel li'u fi podcaste ansan sola
Ha weri silpewe tsne onge kifke ke lievu na bum am unliterantok ha silpewe tsne ongal ke skieva a onge kifke ti
Srane we kelku seri fikipke me
Sunu veru fikipke
fikipke ti to Well, skriva art.
Srane.
Ngai.
Aia tute bultesan o zusaukrme livu sle kro spilwal futa tiska lu tiska al fitsengi tok li.
Srane.
Nifraker sle Zenevko śpiewał w te luang aiweru tsu'o nivo nimun ute tsung nivo ayu sotsan ute nefraker tsun ayowe tsanivul.
Srane.
Ni sìlpey.
Luai weru tsa tsu'o sle kelu veru ana sìlpey ai sautute tsakemsai. Taluna natkenong fos peam ai sutel weya at keye ftolei mipa ayektanit ulte tsakr ektan yolora pultes neye san ai sute ketsun skiva a kifkeit sau kefkeit o ketsunslu ha kesena aioe lekifatem kauid sek ulte saulu fe ne au ulte ai sutel wajat keye ne jeft olei saiktani pol yolora
Ma Wllìm toquel USA mi slivam li slivam wel tsatengazekti la mi luweru sìlpey taluna saifo kelu ampe ute lut ampeor fratetur
Rut eywa'eveng.
Ketsunoi living sa taluna fea na'vis.
Untitled Navis?
Ketsun na'vis fitsinge lukane.
Srane, fit kelu auveja fifos pea.
Srane.
Spauwel futa futenta paili ut na pulte.
Cause se ningai lu aiolo ur tsu'o lekivatem fraut. Ektan il Golan. Aektan ek nao. Non zene aiwel non aektanti fte saiforu livu titur ke sweleu kelu sweleu luke aiwe aektan ketsun ivek
Sorry for skate dog frakker. Ha zene livuaungaru sìlpey.
Strane.
Saran.
Srak.
Fi'ulu voor a galu o uteset nganeo hasesi visrak.
Strane. Sittenk o kelu o.
Koop lula haunger fitseng ute zene oi tikankevsivi terrai fu fitr.
Fitr strane. Wege yo anything.
Tam tsakar sa hasesi.
Hasesiko.
All right, with that, we're going to wrap up the podcast. Be sure to join us next time for a discussion about all things Avatar. We literally don't have any topics lined up, so it's a mystery to current me what future me will be talking about. But if you stay subscribed to the Eana Mokri podcast, you'll know as soon as I do.
You could bet leNa'vi will be involved at some point.
Yes, definitely. Without a doubt, there will be leNa'vi.
I'm pretty sure that Tamrik will say Wllìm Kamiya in the beginning.
I might, but I might change it up.
Oh. Wow. Adventurous.
Yeah, cliffhanger. I might say Wllìm Kamenge.
Oh.
Oh.
Stay tuned.
You might
Stay
say
tuned.
Kame leNa'vi.
Ooh.
Oh.
Where are these exotic leNa'vis that we are speaking? Man, I think we're giving away too many spoilers for next episode. We better end it right now.